Hi there, I am Kululwa Motua and welcome to this session of Property Market Moves. Today I'm sitting with, my gosh, Thato, how are you?
I'm good, and you, Kululwa?
I'm good. Okay, so Thato is the CEO of the Property Practitioners Regulatory Authority. You know, when you speak to these, you just want to make sure. It's like someone saying "Saibib," like the long way. And you're like, you have to be sober, you know?
Yeah.
PPRA. Before we get into the role that you play, who is Thato?
Well, firstly, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for coming.
I always felt that you're one of the stakeholders where we don't talk enough, and I think we should.
Agreed.
And we've started, and I think that's what's important. Thato is a daughter of a Zulu queen and a Mosotho father.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you know that?
No.
Okay. So, but I'm Mosotho because I mean, Thato Ramaili says it all.
Yeah.
And I'm a mother to a wonderful, wonderful boy. And a wife to TB. That's Thato. I'm a friend, I'm a sister, I'm a colleague, and a leader.
Okay.
That's who Thato is.
All right. For someone who's listening and they don't know, what is the PPRA?
So PPRA, we are a creature of statute. So we are governed by the Property Practitioners Act of 2019, but we came into being in 2022 on the 1st of February to be precise.
Yeah.
We are the only property practitioners regulator in South Africa. And we are one of the 6 entities under the Department of Human Settlements.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And prior to that, there was the EAAB. EAAB.
Yes.
And what has changed from the work of the EAAB to what the PPRA is today?
Well, the erstwhile EAAB only regulated one subsector, which were real estate agents as we traditionally know them. But the mandate of the PPA, the Property Practitioners Act, has broadened our mandate. So we are now responsible for 12 subsectors under our regulatory fold. Our mandate is expanded, and it has brought about some incredible things, obviously. And if you just look at our act alone, you'll see that now we've got 77 sections, which is almost double what the Estate Agency Affairs Act then had. So that is the change.
Okay. And now with the Property Practitioners Act, and for someone who is looking to become, and I think still, predominantly you still find people in estate agents, will be your larger, focus. Yeah. What are some of the key things if I want to become a property practitioner? What are the requirements?
So first and foremost, you will need to identify which sector you're going to fall into. But I'll give an example now for the real estate sector. As you've mentioned, that's our, the largest by far. And I, in my view, Kululwa, I think it will continue to be the largest for many, many years to come because they are obviously well established.
Yeah.
But the point of departure would be for you to identify a firm that you would want to, operate under.
Yeah.
And most importantly, the owner of the firm or that principal has to be registered with us.
Okay.
And then once you get your letter of appointment from them, or employment rather, from them, you'll then have to come to the regulator, fill out the application form and bring your supporting documentation, and of course the fee for a fidelity fund certificate. So that's the first one. And then the second step will be for you to complete a 6-month practical training course with that firm. And then once they've deemed you competent, you will then have to write your PDE, which is your professional designation exam, for you to become a full status agent or property practitioner.
All right. And speaking about fidelity fund certificate, why is that important?
For various reasons. Well, the fidelity fund certificate is a tool of trade. So that is your license to operate. So just like any profession in the legal sector, you need a FFC.
Yeah.
So one, it adds to your credibility so that consumers know that, you know, we are transacting here with a legitimate person. Secondly, I think it's important, Kulula, because, and especially for consumers. So one of our mandates now with the new, with the PPA, Property Practitioners Act, is to protect consumers. So if you transact with a property practitioner that does not have a valid FFC, you as a consumer, you will not have recourse.
Yeah.
So in the event that you suffer a loss, now under the new dispensation, the first thing we'll have to ask you is, the person who assisted you in this transaction, did they have a fidelity fund certificate? If they didn't, it's a loss and we can't assist. So that is why that is important for you to make sure that you are always operating with somebody who has an FFC. That's why it is important for one to have one. I
am laughing because as you're talking, I'm going back in my mind, you know, trying to think about the number of instances where I either bought or sold a property, and I don't ever
ask.
I don't remember ever asking, do you have a fidelity fund?
You're brave. You're brave, or you've got a lot of money to lose.
But maybe we just take it at face value, you know, that they do. And that on its own, I agree, is irresponsible now that we're talking about it. Because you meet an estate agent, you know, through some company maybe that is reputable then, and you then assume that that company must have, but actually asking, and I've never.
But you know why? So before the PPRA, you could. Well, there are still illegal property practitioners, but then it didn't matter. So if you suffered a loss, we didn't ask because we were not required to ask.
Sure.
So even if you were embezzled 10 million, you will come to the then EAAB.
Yeah.
You lodge a claim. We go through the process, and then you can get back your 10 million. But right now, under the PPRA, there's a cap. So there's a cap into the amount of claims that you can, be able to claim against.
Yeah.
But of equal importance is, did you transact with somebody? So again, it's the onus to ask lies with the potential buyer as well.
Sure. So then, outside of the FFC, when someone is looking to transact with a property practitioner, what else should they look out for?
Well, for me, I always say that ethics is important. So, and because we are in it's I always call it as a relationship based business, right? You are an emotional one as well. You're either purchasing a home or renting out a home,
sure,
and you will need to make sure that you are dealing with an ethical person, right? And I always say that it's always easier to do business with people that you trust. Who do you trust? Normally people that you know. And who are the people that you know? People who are in your communities.
Sure.
So always make sure that you are dealing with a property practitioner who's an expert in that particular market. For example, if you live in Houghton, and you want to relocate to Mooitloof in Pretoria East, it really wouldn't do you justice to transact with a Houghton property practitioner unless it's a referral.
Yeah.
Because a Mooitloof practitioner, the likelihood of them knowing that area is high.
Yes.
Indeed, in most cases, you'll find that they live in the area. So they'll be best suited to give you the best savvy advice. And I think that's where trust is also established from, so I think that's also important.
Okay.
Area experts and people that you feel that you can trust.
Yeah. Okay. Now, one of the intentions of the PPA is to drive transformation in the sector. I think again, as I reflect on the number of times I have either bought or sold a property, probably interacted with white, property practitioners. How is the PPA seeking to drive that transformation agenda?
And that when I spoke earlier, I spoke about some of the beauties that this act, introduced into the sector, because in the old dispensation, transformation was there, but it was not prescribed.
Yeah.
So this legislation is so prescriptive, and one of the areas of transformation that we're driving is the principalization program. And then what that seeks to do is to make sure that Black principals, Black business owners in the sector emerge. And just to give you an example, Kululwa, last year, 12 months ago, we're sitting at just under 900 Black principals in this country. Right now, we are sitting at 1,079. So there's been a 30% increase.
Okay.
It sounds like we've moved, but when we're looking at, on average, the residential sector, we are closing 25 billion worth of transaction. So if you're looking at the quantum, is the 1,079? Are we starting to scratch the surface?
Yeah.
And that's the question that keeps me up at night. Are we doing enough? In terms of the new entrants, the numbers are there. We are coming into the thousands.
Yeah.
It's one of my targets as a regulator, because you do know that we have to account at the higher structures. Sure. But for me, what is important, what is key, is to ensure that business owners emerge. That's what's going to keep this thing sustainable, not just numbers of people who are going to wake up tomorrow and say, I'm done in the sector, but really building sustainable, lucrative real estate businesses or property businesses in the sector.
I remember in a session, you were in this session. And there was this, Black female, and you were talking about a billboard, in a very competitive mile, where she actually now has, her business, on a billboard. And I think, I also recall her speaking still to the challenge of actually getting, instructions, even though she still has, come somewhat a long way. How are we seeing, a shift in terms of Black practitioners getting the mandates compared to what it was, 3 or 5 years ago? And how do we change it for in the next 5 years to see more?
That lady, and I know exactly who you're talking to. I've learned that they are trusted brands, for lack of a better term, until we get to a point where we have nationally recognized and trusted brands, Black brands, that will still continue to be the issue. So the principals that I see that are now occupying space and the market share in whatever areas that they're operating in are those that are under brands. So whether it's either their franchise owners.
So Kululwa and Associates is not going to cut it just yet.
Well, I'm not going to say they're not going to cut it, but it definitely takes longer, because what we did with that particular principal, as soon as there was a brand on top of her name or above her name, same person, same individual, I think her sales tripled in 1 year.
Oh,
just from having a brand.
Sure.
That people in the sector, whether they resonate with it or they trust. And honestly, that's one battle that we will have to fight to ensure that at least, and I'm a very optimistic person, Kululwa, very ambitious. And the question has to be asked, can we have a practitioner who has a national footprint in the next 3 to 5 years? Take into consideration what that is going to look like financially. And somebody threw a number at me just last week. I won't mention who he is, but he's one of the top 10 owners. And he said at least 30 million for one for a Kululwa to have a national footprint. So do we take 30 million and amplify Kululwa, or do we take that 30 million and then we spread it?
Sure.
That's a
tough question.
Yeah.
So then the transformation fund, under the PPRA then would have to contend with those issues. Do we take a 30 million and build Kululwa and Associates, or do we spread it, through skills and bringing up more principles
and training? Yes, that's what we are grappling.
Oh my goodness! and there's this question. I don't know if you and I will have an answer, to it. Where we, in as far as transformation is concerned, right? Because I think for transformation to work, it requires a certain level of commitment and intentionality. And I'm guilty because I have not always or ever. The last time we're intentional about finding a Black practitioner that is going to, either in the sourcing or in the, of property or, of an opportunity, property if I'm buying, or someone who's going to sell, for me. Being intentional about looking for a Black practitioner. Do you think we are doing that? Like as Black people, so if you're buying your house, or you're buying, a block of flats for investment, or whatever it is, or selling for that matter, that we are more conscious of it, or we just focus on the transaction without really paying attention to who does that.
And you're right. And I think that's the starting point, because with your money, you really have the power to choose where the professional fee or the com is going to go to. But I think we are often just, we follow the property, and really who's behind that property doesn't matter. But I have to admit, Kululwa, in my selling days, there were people who'd find a home and say, I want this home, but I want you to sell it for me. So then I'll have to go to the sellers and tell them why I should be the one selling. And at that time, I don't have a mandate. So there are people, and I'm talking as recent as 3 years ago, before I came into this role, where they said, you know what? Oh, people came to me. It's an open mandate or a dual mandate saying, we saw 2 people, but we called you because we are intentional about supporting a Black property practitioner. So I really think it starts with the end user in this case, either the buyer, the potential buyer, or the seller. So, and I think that will really assist a great deal, because I really don't think Kululwa transforming the sector.
Sure.
It is a PPR. Yes, it's our mandate because it's prescribed in our legislation. But I really think that it is a national imperative, meaning we as citizens have to be also, deliberate about ensuring that we are moving the needle. So it's not just the regulator's job, because it's such a mammoth, task, but it has to be done, but as a collective.
Okay, so what are the biggest challenges currently facing the PPRA? I know we've just spoken about this big one, that, I've got this, do I take this 30 million and give it to Kululwa alone, or spread it across, which means then when I spread it across, I will not be able to make as much impact in nationalizing our principles, but at least we will be able to create more. But what are the challenges?
There are many, but the ones top of mind, compliance. And this is compliance by practitioners, irrespective of race, irrespective of gender, irrespective of age. Compliance is a big thing. So as an example, all property practitioners who are firm owners are supposed to submit audit returns, audit reports every single year That has never changed.
Yeah.
They don't do that. They simply don't comply. And then obviously we need to enforce.
Sure.
And we do so again by what's confined in our act. With the PPA, there's a section that says, you know what, they are minor and major contraventions. If you don't comply or you contravene, these are the fines. And once we then evoke that section of the legislation or the regulation, then there's war. But I said, but you had, so why are you not filing audit reports as an example?
Yeah.
And the reason for that is that in the old dispensation, if you didn't submit your audit reports, would simply block you. So you wouldn't be able to practice. But now, in the 3 years, that's how long the FFC now is for Kulula. They know they've got 3 years, so they don't submit every single year. But now, it's the biggest, it's actually, we are going to embark on the first renewal phase since the promulgation of the Act.
Jeez.
So there will be those firms that are not complying. And remember, once a firm doesn't comply, meaning everybody under that firm, I cannot issue an FFC for. But my thing is just simply comply. What are you hiding? And then the other one is just the CPD. We offer CPD on an annual basis.
Yeah.
That's continuous professional development. Yes. It's the norm in most industries, just so that you stay up to date with the trends, latest regulations or amendments to any, provisions of any act that has a direct impact on our sector.
Yeah.
They will not come and take their CPD. And now with the new act again, it's allowed other external service providers to issue the CPD. And they just won't comply. So for me, that's the biggest challenge. But then once you then say you are guilty, these are your contraventions.
Then we fight.
But if you just simply comply, like a box ticking exercise, which is actually going to make you a better practitioner, why don't you just do it?
So the world is moving digital. I mean, every sector. How are we seeing this in the in your space? Digital, transformation, digitization,
yes.
Of process, of applications, renewals, from a PPRA perspective, and probably also in the work then that the practitioners actually do in the industry.
You know what's the coolest thing I've seen as of late? AI. So practitioners are no longer the ones scribing. Their property descriptions. You're moving to your dream abode. You know how they always do it. AI is doing it for them. So that's the first thing, the coolest thing that I've seen. And I think it saves time. It's also, I think, more, because we're not all writers, right? So obviously the writing is of a enticing style, and it wants a buyer. You're like, I really now need to go see this property. That's the first thing. And then secondly, and this also relates now to the valuation space.
Sure.
Where the drones come and then they are able to take the measurements of a home. So we're no longer using wheels to measure homes. So we are able to get the exact size measurements of the the exterior. So, and I think that's how technology has made it, like it's a cool profession. And I think the people who are enjoying it the most also are the ones in the agricultural space or who are selling agricultural holdings. So can you imagine selling a 100-acre or hectare home? How are you going to measure it? You have to literally measure it. The traditional way was with a wheel. But as far as the PPRA is concerned, I think really it's about time. And that's one issue. Kulula, if I don't do it in my tenure, then you guys can say, in my language, we'll say, ke pale. And we finally have a CIO on board. And we've always, the board approved a digital strategy. I think 2 years ago. But the implementation was a problem. So I think finally we have somebody who's in charge of that business unit to ensure that we implement it, we digitalize it. Because for crying out loud, I'm stressed because now come renewal season in July, any manual, anything, I really want to run away. So that's one of it's in my 2025 KPIs, because that's where the world is moving, and I think it will really enable us to best service and serve our stakeholders. Yeah.
Okay. Now, I mean, estate agents, and I was traditional estate agent, career would attract anyone, right, from any field. So you're an ex-nurse, you're an ex-teacher, an ex-whatever, or you pursue it as extra income whilst you are still that, naturally having gone through, the training and having qualified. Is it work that anyone can do? And I'm asking because there's an aunt, of mine. She's an ex-teacher.
Okay.
So she sat and she thought, okay, what am I going to do with myself now that I am retired? And she retired early, so she still has the energy. But she actually just found that it just does not speak to my personality, cold calling and people, even when people are dropping the call on you, it just feels so personal. Is it work that anyone can do?
A resounding no. and I'll tell you why. One, it's a people's business. So if you don't like people, so it's not about just brick and mortar.
Yeah.
If you're not a people's person, this is not the business for you. And I think in the core of it all, it's sales. So if you don't want to sell, because you are selling yourself, your ability to, your expertise, then you have to then sell a valuable possession of another person. But I also think that really, if you're not if you don't have resilience as one of your character traits, and I think people who do it and do it well make it look easy, that you can close R1 billion transactions within 5 years, and you're like, oh my God, I can do that. But no, and one of the common things, especially for sellers who you list their property and within 24 hours you have an offer, they're like, that was too easy. You don't even deserve the professional fee. But they don't know the behind the work. You've been making sure that the buyers that you present to them are eligible and good buyers, because some of them just got off debt review. You had to work 6 months with them and another dedicated financial expert to make sure that their financials are in order. They are bond originators who have helped them with their pre-approvals and make sure that they get the bond grants. But when you get to them, they just see that you brought somebody and literally within 24 hours, you're an OTP. It's like it's 200,000 that was not earned.
Jam.
But you've been working. For 12 months, you haven't been earning. You haven't been earning because you've been working the process and perfecting the potential buyer to them, to present to them, but no, it's not easy.
Sure.
It's not easy money.
Yeah.
It's not easy money.
And what was it about it that attracted you? Because I mean, now you are the CEO of the PPRA, but actually went through, that process. What did you find attractive about it?
Okay, so my background is in accounting and finance.
Yeah.
So I've always had to deal with people's numbers or audit numbers, big numbers of people who are either in the property space, who are investment, property investments. So I'll be lying, Kulula, if I say I entered it because it was community service. My current role, yes. If you look at how much I'm making now and how much I was making as a property practitioner, I've taken a pay cut. So this is service. This is public service. But the real estate sector, if we're being honest, you enter it because it's a lucrative sector. That's one. Two, we are literally changing people's lives. As a property practitioner, for you to give somebody a home, that's dignity. It is, and I think for me that way supersedes the financial aspect of it. But we're doing it because really, there were points where people were printing money.
Sure.
And if any property practitioner is saying they're doing it for anything other than that. I mean, amongst other things. Then you go and do an NGO, you know what I mean? But for this one, really, we are literally changing people's lives.
Yeah.
Every day.
All right. So in the property market, are there any trends that people may not be aware of yet that the PPRA is already seeing by virtue of, your positioning and your oversight over the market?
Well, and I think this is informed by the current, the interest rates have been at an all-time high. Yes, we're seeing a decrease, but it's not as constant as, the way it was, right?
Yeah.
So people are gravitating towards the more affordable housing space.
Okay.
And we're seeing it with our sister entities who are, developing social housing at a rapid rate. And that speaks a lot about what the citizens of this country can afford. So that's the trend that I'm seeing, but also an opportunity, right? You'll see that property practitioners who were only holding one FFC as real estate agents, now they are getting their second FFCs as managing agents. Why? Because they are those social housing that are coming up where those people now need to be serviced, collecting of rent, because collecting of levies, obviously that's another, it's a mandate for another, one of our sister entities. But that's the trend that I'm seeing. And also, the township economy, I think we can't deny that. It's booming.
Oh my
People
goodness.
are leaving gated communities because levies are expensive. So we're going back to our Sowetos. We are modernizing those homes. So the property rates and the property prices in those areas now we're seeing an upward trajectory. And I think it's good, because township was always, this is now where you're getting your 600,000 rand homes.
Yeah.
But we are in the millions now.
Oh, wow.
Which again is good for homeowners as well, because that means your investment is growing. But also for property practitioners, now they're playing in a market that again is lucrative. But definitely, Khulula, I'll say that social housing market is going. It's expanding.
And I guess it probably also speaks to, new entrants, even beyond, people who have, young families. And really this is just the space where they can actually enter and gain that dignity, of having a home that they can call, their own, and having a title deed.
Yes.
I saw an article, I think they're talking to, these penthouse purchases that now they are growing, in areas such as Cape Town, and you're seeing them in Johannesburg, you're seeing more of them in, even in Pretoria. Now, naturally, these are not for everyone because, they're big ticket acquisitions.
Double digits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if that is an industry or an area where you still see a growing market for those who earn like many millions, so you'd be having two extremes: the affordable, which is like the entry, and then the high end. What's happening to the middle? What is happening to the middle? Are we losing, pipeline, in that space, or is it just static? Is it going down? Is it, I
think the middle market will always be there. And you know what's the perfect example? Midrand. The recent stats, and I don't keep me honest here, but in the last year, the last 2 years, where the market wasn't that great.
Yeah.
Midrand is still the leading suburb in terms of sales. in Gauteng, actually in the country for that matter, in terms of volume. And this also includes sectional titles, but also the obviously Western Cape will always beat us in terms of the price tag.
Yeah.
But in terms of volume, Midrand is still the leading in the printing title deeds at the deeds office, and they're coming from Midrand, and that's the. And with the average price is still around 850, but you're looking at 850 I think about the 1.2 1.3 margin.
Okay.
So Midrand is still the leader.
Midrand is just not slowing down, because I think when I came to Gauteng, I mean, like 20 years ago, Midrand was still, the place. I guess that location, just being in that nice middle between Pretoria and Joburg has just always worked.
Yes.
Because people still leave Midrand and go to Joburg for work and go to Pretoria for work. But Midrand then becomes the home.
Yes. And it's still central, right?
Yeah.
For you to the airport, like you're saying, to your CBD, to Pretoria. If you want to go to Limpopo, it's again well positioned, but once again, you spoke about penthouses. So in Midrand, that's one of the suburbs where you can really get a cottage to a penthouse in the same radius.
Jeez.
Yes. So I mean, your Ellipse in Waterfall, that's where they've got your penthouses. And then, but you've also have Tembisa. And Olifants, they by Olifants Fontaine.
Yeah, not too far off.
Oliven.
Yes.
Oliven, is that the other?
Yes,
yeah.
Oliven.
Yeah, but then you also have your golf courses right in the smack. So Midrand is really a one-stop.
It's a nice mix.
Yes.
Portuguese.
Yes.
Okay, so the key strategic priorities, you've definitely spoken to that digitization.
Yes.
What else is a priority for you in the next 3 to 5 years?
Transformation will continue to be a priority up until such a time that the stats that I gave you earlier
change,
drastically. Right, so that will continue to be, and also just fostering our initiatives with NRF, right? Our research initiatives. I think that's also key. And what people will care to know is that we have published 2 research papers and with our research center, and we are presenting our papers in the US next month. In collaboration with NRF.
Okay,
we had a postdoctoral student who was assisting us from the Nelson Mandela University, and I think that ties in nicely with professionalizing the sector. Who are we professionalizing? How are we professionalizing them? Obviously through education and training, but we always have to do research so that we are a step ahead. What are the global trends? And I think I always say, Kulula, we are really not a third world country, especially when you see what the rest of the world are doing. At some point, they have to review us as South Africa, and then our trends need to match those of first world countries, especially in the property space.
Okay, and when we look at skills and training, and I guess a lot of it then will happen in that time where you are housed in that agency under a principal where they will teach you how to find how to get leads, how to, and all of that. But are there skills that are probably not fully imparted in that environment that a PPRA would deems necessary, and would even go to the extent of providing to help that individual to just be a good property practitioner?
We can't talk about our sector and not talk about entrepreneurship and really business acumen, because at the end of it all, that's who we are trying to. We want to emerge business owners, and that we are doing it through our SMME incubation program. And for me, really, it's not just about the funding. It's not even a funding, it's a grant.
Yeah.
It's minimal. It's like $250,000, but really imparting skills and mentorship from people who have done it over the years, to say it's something else to have a principal property practitioner.
Yeah.
We give them the training, they go through our PDE, but how do those people then stay in the sector? And I think staying in the sector is informed by, are you wired like an entrepreneur? Because an entrepreneur stays and weathers the storm. When the market is low, whether the market is high, they remain. And I think that's what we need to do, or we are I'm trying to do as the regulator, having practitioners stay.
Sure.
And their retention rate has always been low. But that's also understood, because I think in the past, our focus was on the new entrants.
Okay.
But and that's still the goal.
Yeah.
But I think my vision for the sector is the business owners, because that's who remain, that's who will create jobs, and that's our assistants using the SMME incubation program.
Okay. How can the industry better support the work of the PPRA?
Support our transformation initiatives. And it's not just money is good, for those organizations, especially in the private sector. There are some who have really raised their hand to say, how can we collaborate? I think that's important. So not resisting transformation, but also through mentorship. So there are, in the recent, actually past weeks, I've had organizations say, you know what, we want learners because these are the skill set we want to assist them on. And some of them are in the development space to say, how, we see what you're doing, but we want to, take them through some of our, learnings and teachings. And once again, I said it's a collaborative effort, really. And that's what I would ask assistance from. Yeah.
It's certainly comply. Submit.
Yes.
Submit those.
Yeah.
How do you run a business and actually not
comply?
Conduct. Yes, because if you're running an honest business, then you've got those audit reports in any event. So then
and we're not the only ones. So one of our recent MOUs is signed with the FIC, right? And every time somebody sees FIC, they are actually, when it comes to compliance, especially in the sector, where there's certain thresholds that practitioners ought, it's not even a choice. They ought to report them to the FIC. They're not. Why? If it says that any transactions up until, from 49,999 and it's cash, you need to report it. Why are you not doing it? What are we hiding? We've been grey listed, and actually that's what informed this MOU to say we are grey listed as a country.
Yeah. And
this sector is the cause. We need to clean it up. How do we do that? First and foremost, compliance and transparency. Should I go on?
And I'm just, thinking about all these challenges that we create and then, complain when they exist, right? Because if we're saying then the FIC needs us to comply for it to comply, and when it doesn't, then it has got these
repercussions.
Repercussions. But when we are there and we're grey listed, but we just look at someone is not doing something somewhere, but we never think about the role that I play.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah. We need to work.
Yes, we do.
We really need to work. Okay, so how can we work together with the PPRA? And I mean, we started this conversation saying we're actually not talking enough. And I'm not just speaking, from a cyber perspective, but other, industry stakeholders. How can we support the work of the PPRA?
So with the PPA, Kulu, and thank you for that, and thank you for being available and willing, a willing participant. Consumer awareness, I think is one of the areas where, again, it's, yes, it's in my mandate. It's in my mandate because it's written in black and white in our act, but just having every citizen of this country, you know, the same way that when you're driving, everybody knows the SARS logo, the colors, and what SARS does. And I think for a sector that touches on each and every individual in this country, be it you are a homeowner or you are renting, I think all of us belong to a home, or we ought to know our rights within that space, the opportunities for those who want to conduct business, the trainings, and just areas of, if I've been scammed, where do I go? A lot of people don't know. So just assist us in consumer awareness and training. And I think we've started. So just collaborating with our stakeholder unit, because we do it whether via webinars. We hold webinars every month. We do in-contact sessions. There's been other organizations where we do stakeholder engagements in person, or what do they call them again? In the past, people just get on a bus and then just go to a community.
Oh yes,
you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
the word escapes me now.
You know, this community awareness.
Yes.
Campaigns.
Yes, correct. So that's where I'll need assistance. And again, just really around the transformation that I cannot emphasize enough. Whether be it through stamping on some of the things that we are busy with, Kulula. One of, I can't talk about it on this forum because it's sub judice.
Sure.
But we've been the Section 63, undesirable practices in the sector. Again, this is transformative, but not only for Black people, for all players in the sector. You know, the issue of accreditation fees. It's in its advanced stages. We're waiting for a court date. So for people to say, okay, Thato, PPRA, we see you, but you're not alone in this, and journey with us, I think that will go a long way.
Okay. All right. So as we wrap up, we have got a question from our last guest that just closed. Come on. And it really speaks to, because I think the conversation that we're having was a finance-related conversation. And it says, how is access to finance enabling or blocking off creating barriers in your environment, in your space? So it was an open-ended question, not taking into account who you are and what your space is, but how is access to finance enabling or blocking from now? And yes, we've just spoken to, a number of aspects, but transformation or just someone who has money, what difference does money make in becoming a successful property practitioner?
Sure. And before you explained it, I was going to answer it in a different manner, and maybe I still will. But having money, one, you are a step ahead, because in this sector, for you to be successful, people need to know that you exist. How do people know that you exist? Through awareness, brand awareness, marketing, whether digital or in person. That costs money to do, the billboard that we're talking about, we all know that kind of marketing is probably one of the most expensive one of them all. So once you can have that, and one of the issues that PDIs have, your previously disadvantaged individuals have in the sector, when you start up, I used to sign my OTPs on the bonnet of my car. Can you really sell a mansion using that? No. So people want to see office space. Office space, that's rent, that's money. So if you have money and you can say, Kululwa is in the area. This is where I'm situated. This is my office. And we can see you on social media everywhere.
There's
already.
Credibility.
There's credibility, and you're already, a step ahead. And for those months, especially if you're a new entrant, into the sector, for those who have succeeded or stayed, is you'll hear people say, I had 6 months savings. So the 6 months where I was getting leads, I was getting stock, I didn't get paid. For somebody who every month they're living from, hand to mouth, they don't have that luxury. But if you have money, so you see how money plays an important role. So it will give you, access, a quicker access into whatever and occupying that market share. But for us as a regulator, and I think I'll take it a step further to say access to market. And one of the issues, Kulula, and I think this is recorded, this is public information, for the last 2 years, we've been unable to conclude an MOU with BASA. It's been back and forth. It's still in a draft format, but I'm meeting them again next week. Because the one clause, we can have a 100-page MOU. The only thing that I want in there is let's include Black property practitioners in your bank panels when you are disposing of stock. It's a one line. That's all I'm asking for this MOU. Everything else we'll do later. And it just hasn't come through. And 2 years later. 2 years later. And one of the reasons is that I was given is that for you to be on a bank panel, you ought to have a national footprint. Meaning, as Kulula, you must appear in all the 9 provinces. Where are you going to have that if you don't have money? So answer that the previous question. If you have the money, you can open up an office in KZN, Western Cape, Mangaung, Free State, Gauteng, Limpopo, Mpumalanga.
Physical space and resources, right, to run that office.
Then you can then you can apply to be on a bank panel. So you see how it doesn't matter where you look at it. Not having access to market or finances is more of a block, a hindrance, and a barrier.
Jeez, I'm just imagining then how many Black conveyancers would be on that bank panel, because how many of them actually have a national footprint?
Yeah, and we collaborate on battles as well with so I'm friends with the LPC because our problems are similar in nature. So the Legal Practice Council, that's another thing where we're collaborating on, because that's their cry that they're not getting bank panels. And then the other issue before we close, Kulula, that is going to be disruptive and uncomfortable. So Black conveyancers have come to me and they've said, you know what, we're not getting business from your PDIs. We see that you are transforming. They're getting grants, but they don't give us their deals. Why don't they give us their deals? Because we don't have the ability to give them a kickback of 25,000.
Oh my gosh.
Do you see?
Okay.
But that's a conversation for another day.
That is another conversation, because the reality is that is just not acceptable, right? If the PDIs are expecting me to give them a kickback and no one else is asking me that.
And you're also an SMME as a conveyancer, by the way. So you see how we talk transformation. We want to be transformed, but we don't want to aid in transformation. Yeah. Those are the issues. But it will be take 2.
Yeah.
For that one.
That's a conversation on its own.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you for your time. I enjoyed this conversation.
So did I.
Well, that was this segment, and I hope that you stuck with us right through to the end. And do follow and subscribe to our channel, and share it with your community. Bye.